So leave our eyes closed for a few minutes. Glad everybody here. Quite a couple of weeks, and really glad to have Peter here today. And from California, LA, Laurel Canyon. So always love a good report of a day. Most fun. Baba used to say, this yoga of the siddhas, this yoga of the great masters, doesn't belong to any country. Not unlike Namkar Norval, the same thing. Doesn't belong to any religion, you know. Nobody owns it. You know? And in fact, being with him, that's what it was like. There was dharma, but not dogma. And when you have dharma as dogma, actually dharma tends to disappear. And one of the people may talk about today, Henry Corbin, also had that understanding. And we're going to do what we've been doing the past month or so. Again, I think I might work with a few people, and it's okay with everybody, and add a little bit more as we doing this, and just working with this level of energy or light or the archetypical level. And then Pete and I will chat about it, and we'll all chat about it together. And some of the frames will be some of Pete's papers. One is called Conversations Within Astrology, and the archetypes and Jyotish Mati, that light of awareness. Another one on, I don't know how to pronounce that.
The Alam al-Mathal.
Alam al-Mathal by Henry Corbin, and the great Sufi Ila Rabi. Again, I pronounce these things, but he was like Longchenpa. He was to the Sufi movement. And then the archetypal cosmology and the work of Richard Torres. So let's focus it again. You guys focus on me. Become a better person in time. And I'm going to focus with Anna again. Hi, Anna. Good to see you. And I'm going back to the beginning person because I believe when we do that, there are traces in the field. You with me? There's traces, and you go back to the traces. You with me? Then you have to go through everybody, but there's a trace that arises and supports the field phenomena. How are you doing?
Good.
Good. Can we just do a few minutes of focusing?
Yeah, great.
So we'll focus in, inside to inside. I kind of have to leave my mind right now and go in. And we're all extending to each other. And Anna, what's it like for you right now?
So as I explained to you, it feels, as I had before, it feels a part of me that feels sort of magnetized into a vortex.
Yes.
So it's like meeting you, but in a swirl.
There's a swirl, yes, the vortexualness of this dimension of vortexualness. So I'm going to focus with you. Then I'm going to extend an energy to you very lightly. And what is that like for you right now?
So my experience was that initial light and movement is being widened into space, and there's more sort of perceive it as dark space where that movement can happen in.
Yes, that luminous darkness, huh? No, Tromanagmo, to use one metaphor. Dark. Let's go a little further. And so I'm going to ask you this strange question you and I have explored. Can you feel the who in me? Can you feel the who-ness in me right now?
Yes.
What does that experience feel like to you, that who-ness?
So it takes, after having kind of focused into that's more larger. Not that the wholeness isn't large, but there's some, I can feel that I'm doing something different to feel the wholeness, which it's like I'm recognizing something in you, which isn't your psychology, but there's something I know, which brings me into my own body, my own flesh, as I'm looking for that in you. So when I feel it in you, I can feel my own embodiment.
Yes. Isn't that really interesting? We feel that wholeness in another. There's the resonance of we become more embodied, huh? That wholeness. And now, can you experience the wholeness in you in that embodiment at this moment?
I do. I do. So, yes, I can feel. I don't quite understand how this all comes together, but I can feel that wholeness holding or mixing with the swirls in the space.
Let's just stay with this experience just as it is, that wholeness that's mixing with the swirls, the vortexualness in this, of the space. And what's it like to still experience that wholeness, or I would say the unfolding of wholeness in your embodiment? What's it like to be in that and experience that in me simultaneously?
Well, as I'm feeling it now, I find it a little bit hard to distinguish. So I can feel my wholeness and yours, but I feel them in unity, so it's hard to distinguish. But at the same time, it's almost like that creates a cauldron.
Yep, the alchemical cauldron. No, stay with that now. And what's happening now?
Feels like it's settling and it doesn't matter. So I can feel my hueness and it's more in unity with yours, and it feels like in this moment there is a particular power that feels potent, and masculine is not the word, but it feels, it's not the soft moonlight quality, it's more, it can take action.
Yes, yes, there's a movement where it can come into action. Almost like from timeless awareness into time. That action, that moving action. And from my side, I am not doing anything here. I am, the only thing I've done is I'm articulating, but I am not operating technically. This is not technical drama. The only thing I have done with some purpose or intent was to extend, as I'm going to extend some energy to you at one point. But that was just, so we don't get lost in technical physiology here. Are you with me? Is that okay, me saying that, Anna?
Yes, I understand.
What's it like to have that understanding, that feeling of this?
Well, it feels more like setting something up and attending to it and allowing something to emerge or happen.
Great. So we set something up, we're configuring something, and then we experience what's emerging simultaneously. And this realm has its priorness, to simply psychology. It supports it. So I'm going to pause here for a minute. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And then I'm going to ask another person. Kate, hi. We haven't worked yet this way, have we? Okay, so let's just stay with this together. And again, can you feel me over here? Okay, and what's it like to feel me over here? And that's a double entendre. That's a metaphor, right? What's it like to feel this over here at this moment?
I am aware. Just increasing openness.
Yes, and what's that like to feel that unfolding of openness?
Just an instantaneous almost a pulling.
Yes, that pulling, that pulling, that has that little magnetic quality, and then we can go into, if we're not using mythology, but we could go into the mythology of the Dakini as the curricula, right? The red Dakini, that magnetizing energy. And if they describe the five full acts of the Dakini, which is awareness, and one is the magnetizing energy, the pull, another is the extension, amplification, and I'm forgetting the other ones, pacification. And what's happening now for you?
I'm aware of my physiology, I'm aware of sort of heart coming out, both extension, dropping in and extending to you and the room, and also my own just bodies, almost an awareness of sort of sensation.
Sensation.
Mm-hmm.
Is it multiple sensation or simply one sensation?
It's multiple. And a little, there's a dropping into my body, and also for me right now, a bit of a pulling up. So I'm aware of that.
So you feel like you're becoming more into the body and elongated? Would that be?
Yeah, elongated is a good word.
Is for that elongation taking?
Yeah. And just as I'm with it, it's dropping more down, and I'm feeling more embodied, if that makes sense.
And as it drops down and goes extending, elongated down, or whatever that is.
Yeah.
What is that like to feel that formulation taking place within you?
There's a drop from the mind into the heart, and then movement really coursing down the heart into the lower centers. So I'm aware of more stability.
And what's it like to experience that unfolding of stableness?
It's liberating is the word that comes. It's aware, almost as if in my humanness I'm aware there's a light just infusing, if that makes sense, sort of the and coming with and extending out of me as I'm embodied and deeply in my form.
So as you're embodying, there's this emanation arising.
Right.
So as embodiment, there's this emanation coming through. And what's it like to have no effort in this undertaking? If there's such.
Yeah, no, it's it arises, and the more awareness I have of, the more trust I have just in the, just sometimes the slightest turn.
What's it like to feel at this moment alone the dissolving of doubt? Just at this moment, if that's actually what it feels like.
Yeah. Um, there's a serenity to it. Um, there's a further releasing of the mind, which has been a little agitated this morning.
And yet
So,
you're releasing your mind, and yet you're speaking simultaneously.
mm,
Interesting. You're releasing your mind, and yet speech is arising in you.
yes, and there feels a real dissolving into the heart of just a luminous, just luminosity I'm aware of, and a deep feeling of trust and support.
What's it like to feel the dissolving taking place? Just this dissolving, just like things manifest, they also dissolve. What's it like to experience this dissolvingness?
It feels totally natural. Just the arising and the falling, the appearance and the disappearance. So in this moment, it feels very, just a very naturalness to it.
As you're describing, to me it feels intrinsically liberating, just that
Mm.
process of appearing, disappearing.
Yeah, there's not a need to sort of grab on or, be in a state of kind of cogitating or gnawing or, as I can easily find myself at times in my mind. It's a real, just a feeling of formlessness in my own form.
In your form. Thank you so much. Would you pass the mic? We have one more person. And I think I'm going to pass it to Mario over there. Okay. Just for a few more moments and focus in as we're exploring this, that two awarenesses are better than one at times. And what's it like for you right now?
I'm still relishing in the energy from the shirt. It was so beautiful.
What is it like to feel yourself relishing in the energy of the shirt?
It almost made me sad in a way because it's what I want, and I realize that that's what I've been looking for my whole life, is that feeling, and I realize that through the work that we're doing here, it is possible to obtain that within yourself and to maintain it, and it's really powerful. It feels like a hug, a heart hug.
Without sense to it, isn't that definitely palpable?
Oh, it's so soothing. It's almost like stepping back into the womb or something. And for me, it feels just like so incredibly loving, peaceful.
She says womb comes to me that matrix, that promoting matrix. Anything else to look? No. So this is to me, this conversation, it's not quite a regular conversation. And it's not psychology in the regular sense that influences our psychology. It's a bit beyond psychology, and that psychology fits within it. And we've been calling it the archetypical dimension, this dimension of the energy and light and configurations. And so we're going to explore that Because we think that experience is really great, but to have some understanding about it and we think it's really great experience. The truth is the experience, and at the same time, in understanding it in many different ways, there's no one way of understanding it, but it helps it become representational in our mind, and that helps us actually hold it and live it and find it. And it actually supports a narrative that if the narrative is flexible enough, it's really, really useful, because we are mind and awareness in this embodiment thing. That's what we've been doing. So I'm really glad Pete's here today. Let's just focus again just for a moment. And so we're going to chat a bit, then you guys can jump in about just what is this archetypical stuff? What is it? You know? What is it? What does it mean? Good morning.
Morning. Do you want to put this between us?
Okay, let's
This
do
is-
it. We'll just do it. That's great. Fantastic.
I think that should be fine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here we go. And that picks up everything.
Okay, great.
And we're all going to stay in awareness, though. Because if we're in awareness, then we'll be talking from awareness. If we all go into our mind, it won't quite work right. Great.
I was just trying to think how to frame it in light of the work you all were just doing,
Mhm.
in terms of that even. When you said, do you feel that this who-ness of
This
me,
who-ness, yes.
and that to me was like, in terms of speaking from an astrological perspective,
Yes.
from a Vedic astrological perspective, is so much the same notion of a conversation within awareness as this idea of the Jyotish Mati, which means the light of awareness, but like the astrologer holding the light of awareness.
Uh-huh.
But most importantly also is the person that they're speaking to as well, and bringing it into this mutual knowing. And what is interesting about that is not only does that open up everything, but it's at that moment that Anne's also said, well, now I feel like I'm in my body.
Yes.
The embodiment there, at that moment when you have that experience in speaking to someone, is also the moment where they begin to embody and invoke the archetypal kind of body of it, the planets, as they start to feel them
As a seer,
as a sense, you know.
As a seer, SPHRE.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to repeat what you're
Mhm.
saying, and we can just that there's something magical. The magic actually takes place. The magical as a dialogue opens, as who-ness resonates to who-ness, and in that then there's a deepening of the embodiment, not just of the meat, you with me, but of this whole archetypical dimension becomes invoked by. That's why I always love so much from Durjam Lingpa that Dakini appears to him and says to him, "You and I are indivisible. There's a you, and there's an I, and then there's indivisibility. And with that, that dimension arises."
Yeah. And it's kind of like in that dialogue too, that it's like a further cutting through. So there was this first experience of sort of sitting,
Mm-hmm.
entering into awareness, or trying to get to this opening
Yeah.
feeling of the field, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of the other language that I often use, is also from the Sufi understanding of Henry Corbin's understanding of the Sufis, which is highly individualistic. He's a mid 20th century phenomenologist who was an Islamic scholar, but really ultimately so much of this is kind of his own mystic reading of everything.
His own experience.
And so he uses this Arabic term tawil, meaning like symbolic understanding, or but also it really is just like shifting from the mind into awareness, that opening, just cutting into the intermediate space that he calls the realm of creative imagination, or Alam al Mathal, but this is all, it's archetypal space, archetypal sphere, and this kind of idea. So there's a shift in this is first cutting through, but then the second is the beginning of a dialogue. And what's interesting too today, as we're passing around Noctinada's shirt, too, is that for him, he's a very highly individualistic, highly kind of anti-authoritarian character, I guess.
Yeah.
In this incredibly academic writing,
Yes.
everything goes back to the impossibility of a church, or it's like anti-fundamentalist to the point of okay, sure,
Yeah. Anti-literal. Anti-literal.
anti-literal, and a really beautiful kind of phenomenological argument against literalness and rationalism.
Literal concrete thinking.
Yeah, literal concrete thinking. But the point being that this second shift, once you're into this symbolic understanding, which is a dimensional shift in his view, is then this search and this conversation with the inner guide, and that this is the greatest Sufi understanding, is the search for the 12th Imam, or Qadir, or there's all these different
The
ways
guru.
of looking at it. But what it is the guru, and it's entirely like a double of oneself on another plane. Like a spirit guide who is a guru, and that are like
It is
indivisible,
oneself on another plane.
but at the same one. And what I like, the conversations that occur, whether it's in like divination, like in astrology, or I Ching, or in any of these different frames, you'll see it there, but also in, I would think, a psychological frame, or or just in working with another person. When it's on this level that we're talking about, when we're enter into this awareness and we start to have this conversation, it's also like a mirror of that same search for that same field of conversation. Does that
Yeah.
make sense what I'm saying?
To me, I felt just listening to that description. First, there was invitation with Anna, just starting off with her, and then there was like a cutting through. There was like a cutting through. Then it started opening more, and the space became more embodied. But also in that embodiment was just not embodied. It was the whole thing became embodied. There was a container of embodiment, that cauldron, that container, and with that, to me, there was a more self-arising of greater depth and perception, which is actually like that dialogue with the guru.
Yes, yeah, and it arises into a mutual knowing that then, and the embodiment. What's so interesting too is that, at least, is that it brings it then back into multi-dimensionality, and then we can, it can be languaged again as she's speaking. More arises in the language. It's not mind alone, but it is returning, through the language and spoken back into like the more phenomenal, or I don't know,
When Kate was talking, the thing was really strong for me with her at one level, experientially, was this state of non-conceptual connectedness. And yet that's where I felt her language. I just think she was talking in all these languages, is literally coming up this way and articulating her experience multidimensionally, but not from her mind alone. It wasn't her associative mind articulating that.
Right, yeah. And in the speaking, that the kind of return, the coming up, too, from an astrological perspective, because and this kind of gets to the question we've thought is sort of central to talking about astrology, is kind of what is archetypal, realm, what is archetype, and that they're ultimately multidimensional. That the archetype manifests back into the literal or the phenomenal, into the circumstance.
Yes.
And in that kind of languaging from this intermediate space, or even arising from the kind of potential space, then you have a integration or something of that nature with the archetype that through coming back.
For me, what
Yeah.
I'm hearing is that the archetype is a dimension, but it's not simply a dimension. I can concretize it too much.
Right.
It
Mhm.
is a multidimensional phenomenon, and in the multidimensionality of it, it covers from pure potentiality to the rising of the energetic configuration, archetypical dimension, and then it becoming flesh and stuff and cars, and even becoming our mind. Even every thought of our mind is also archetypal in a certain way.
Totally, yeah.
And just to go back to the Tibetan thing, or the Dzogchen thing, like that little text I was using last week. There's a text where we're trying to. There's a text that goes, oh, now it's the Dharmakaya of the Sambhogakaya, and now it's the Dharmakaya of the Manakaya, and now it's the Dharmakaya of the Dharmakaya, and Sambhogakaya, Sambhogakaya,
Right.
and all these different things. There's different little deities for each of them. You with me?
Right. Right.
And again, it's through their way of giving a story, they're describing the same thing, the multidimensionality of this archetypical dimension, and that's why they can describe in certain ways that they start feeling themselves becoming deities or energies or the archetypical energy, but not as some would think. This is a prejudiced point of view, through simply identifying and pretending. I got a little outfit on now. But actually, it's emanating, it's arising through the invocation.
Right.
Is that okay?
No, definitely. Yeah. Well, one thing I would add to that is that when you're looking at someone's astrological configurations, say you look at their sun, which is an archetype of many, has many different manifestations, right?
A little closer for you.
And we want, but on that level of this is the Dharmakaya or the Sambhogakaya, this type of thing. These planets, which are what I give the most kind of ontological status form,
Would you say what that means again? Because it's ontological status
Yeah.
as a form.
I mean, just briefly, let me say, so that the planets seem to have like a beingness of themselves, where they're elemental in a sense, that they're configurations of the primordial light.
Right.
Everything else is sort of a location or something to contain this energy, right?
Okay.
But the planet has thingness.
It has
okay?
some thingness to it.
So what's interesting in that they don't have a meaning, like, the sun is not the ego, like, or the sun is not the father in the sense.
Okay.
This is the meaning. This is when you want to find out this prediction, because this is when we get into kind of junk sciences to say, this is when we have a meaning, but rather the sun is the sun, and it has this sunness, and it's a being in itself. And what we want to do is interact with that archetype, embody it, invoke it, and experience it. And in that case, when you read the newspaper, it says, oh, you're a Scorpio or you're a Libra. That's like saying you're a chair, because that's where it's sitting, like that's where you are sitting.
Fixation.
But this is your chair, so this is who you are, like something like that. But what I was bringing it up for was to say that it's multidimensional in the sense that the sun is an archetype, and if we use that language of meaning, because we get stuck in that, but it's the archetype of potential space. It's the archetype of the Dharmakaya. So it's so when I'm looking at someone and they go through a period where you see within their circumstance, within the very phenomenal level, you see the sun moving to a place that's like pushing for an experience of potential space. You can see that on a circumstantial level or on an archetypal level, but it's hinting at it's not the meaning of it, but it's hinting at the manifestation of this experience of potentiality.
That is really cool.
Mhm.
And what I'm liking also is the very archetype of the Dharmakaya is not only the space, but radiance is
Mhm.
intrinsic to it.
Right.
And that there is this intrinsic oneness of the space and the radiance.
Yeah.
And that really, that radiance pushing us into its own self.
So cosmology is a science of, or astrology, the Indian, which is, I'm not tied to Indian astrology by any means, but it's the science of light. This is what they call it. But it's not, this to me, like the science part makes it sound as if it's objective. But instead, it's a cutting through into light, and light, ultimately, all these planets, which we said, they have thingness. They're like this cosmology that each part of it has like a configuration of light. Ultimately, each is the doorway back into primordial light, but it's experienced both kind of holistically like that at points, but also always through their thingness as well, like the archetypal level of it. Mercury is this doorway, but it's and the
But
sun.
you're saying right here, it's not only experienced as the archetypical dimension, but it's actually in thingness itself, in stuff, in circumstances, in so it's not like there's archetypes and there's thingness quite separate.
Right. Yeah.
As some would think. It is actually a manifestation, thingness of.
Right, and everything, each of these, you can trace both. You can feel the non-man or the unmanifested space through each of these planetary ideas, I think.
In what way? Help us understand
Meaning,
that.
and this is like Corbin is very good, and the Sufis are very good at saying, well, like let's take a look at the intellect, the Mercury. So in astrological language, is Mercury. It's like refined intellect, and in the Sufism of like Surawardi, who's a great Sufi master, it's the realm of the intellect, the rarefied intellect, is the realm of the creative imagination, is the realm of the angels of light. It's all the same. Okay.
It's all the same. Okay.
So that, for instance, is especially in the kind of west meets east where we're at, is in this moment in time, it's like there's kind of like, oh, this is an intellectualization of an idea. Now we're going to talk intellectually, but there is an opening there through discrimination of and refinement and rarefication of that Mercury energy, that like, which is ultimately like an alchemical, like the alchemists as a group, something like that, arising through the Mercury too, just like that sort of knowledge is a form of wisdom that's a cutting through in itself. Yes.
What's coming as you're talking is there's a great Dzogchen master in the 11th named Longchenpa, who was Longchenpa's not teacher, and he would say there's gnosis of awareness and there's gnosis of the refined mind. And so mind is not just quantification, but it's actually perception in its most refined way, and you feel this great unity of mind and awareness.
Right.
Without difference.
There's gnosis of devotion, or gnosis of
devotion,
or gnosis of love, like relational love. Like in a very powerful Venus configuration, where like one enters into mutual knowing through love, but through really another person. You don't have to like intellectualize. You can. You don't have to know what you're saying or something.
Right.
But like
it's not a thought.
Yeah, it's not a thought at all. But so there's all these different. There's gnosis through shadow, through negation. Gnosis through negation. And
Can we talk about that for a minute? Gnosis through negation, and just again going back to the archetypical energies in the planetary form. What would be the planetary configuration where there's gnosis through negation? You guys follow what I'm saying?
Yeah. So again, just not to bring it into this means this, but we have to use a little of that language because, unfortunately, that's like the texts for 6,000 years use that language, and you fight it all day. But where does negation? Where does this? What does that mean? Like it's kind of, or like a emptiness, something like that. One place it arises is through the energy of the eclipses in Indian astrology, and this is Rahu and Ketu. Okay, and this is we're not going to use myth.
Pause.
Yeah.
By eclipse, how I'm hearing it is a negation of the sun. There is a
Or
temporary
or the moon. Yeah.
or
Either
the
one. Yeah.
moon. Some of that light is really being dimmed out.
It dimmed out, it turns into shadow, right? So these are the points. These are the points where it's blocked. Well, they call it shadow, but this is like darkness, all right, or something,
And
or.
that will have some
Mhm.
concrete relevance in my life,
Mhm.
even in forms of thingness.
Oh, totally, hugely so. But it's the axis, the points where the Earth's orbit and the Moon's orbit can intersect in either a solar or lunar eclipse.
Okay.
They're considered such then energetic points. They're shadow planets. Okay, and this is the Rahu and Ketu. So it's shadow in the sense that they give shadowy meanings when we take it into life. Like it can really bring a lot of chaos, a lot of negation in a level of life that can be very difficult. So Rahu is this active side and Ketu is this passive side. What does that mean? Well, ultimately, this is very neutral. This is what it is energy. It's like eclipse energy. It's also where we see archetypally like the Kundalini energy or the Shakti or like just like the vibrancy. Okay.
So you're saying the Kundalini, what we call the Kundalini, is a manifestation of the relationship between Rahu.
It's like everyone has that somewhere.
Somewhere.
It's on the but.
But is it the planetary? Is it Rahu Ketu?
Rahu Ketu is
a symbol of that.
yes, right. It's the head and tail of a snake, or the head and tail of a dragon in Chinese or in Arabic, but it's that serpentine myth as well, but it's
dragon energy too. Would that be
dragon energy exactly. It's saying this. Well, they cross in ways I'm not entirely positive, but in Chinese it would be dragon energy thing, but in Arabic definitely.
Mm-hmm.
But to get out of that mythological frame, it's like they're this pure, either the vibrant, wild, spiritual energy that of the world, sort of, and it's very much of the world. It's
worldly.
It's worldly, while being uncanny and uneasy. It's worldly.
Like Trump?
Exactly like Trump, right? And we can talk about that. He's like, he's on top of that right now. He's riding that snake right now. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And then the other side of that is the Ketus. It's the same stuff, but it's the negation or the otherworldly or the ascetic side of it, something like that. And again, this is all the language I'm using right now is all metaphor, like literary metaphor, to try to get to describe a thing, as opposed to, well, no, it's this. It's not these meanings. It's something.
It's more poetic than factual.
Right now, well, yeah, exactly. There's no, this is poetic language to try to invoke an energy. So when we to draw it, we said the gnosis of negation, right?
The gnosis of negation.
So that's such in many senses, a Ketu idea, meaning that people with a very powerful Ketu, and when it's unrefined or unrarefied or just unheld, when it's passively experienced, it's overwhelmingly negation in the sense of like it can be void or like terrifying, and also
terrifying void, the abyss of nothingness, not as no thingness, but
right, as really nothingness, and it in the most difficult forms, it has this capacity to really negate the self. Like for instance, if it's with the sun, which is like so close to is the archetype of self or like archetype of soul, whatever, it really negates or disassociates, like pulls one apart from that, Now, does that mean that's the nature of a sun Ketu? No, not at all. As I was saying, this is I think Longchenpa had the sun Ketu, because it's one version is pure nothingness, self-negation, another is no thingness, as you said, like, and a complete understanding of that.
So he had he may have at times he had some very difficult
Right.
bad times.
Right.
but there was a refinement of that K2-ness.
Right. And when we say
So
refinement,
he would always start off with absence as
Mhm.
the way to his doorway.
right, absence as like, or I think Kafka's another person who had,
Really?
or I don't know, I think he did, but also my reading of him is extremely Sun K2, and that
Mm-hmm.
absence is an expression of divinity or something, or expression of space.
Of a
Like
manifestation of
like
space.
the
Pure space.
like the impossibility of a conversation with God, which is kind of, or a relationship,
Mm-hmm.
which is sort of his joke the whole time, is also what, like, in that impossibility you have this experience, like in like the kind of so that kind of negation. But it's more than that. It's an opening through that type of void experience, or through that emptiness experience, into the self. Ultimately, that is a really, when K2 is powerful for you, that's also the doorway that's most accessible, or something like that. So then, how does that manifest as?
It becomes your path.
It's your path, but so what's strong or what's weak or what's good or what's bad in any individual's circumstances from this astrological point of view, or is really like, well, this is the given path. You have to take it, probably not. You could probably focus on other things, like other less incredibly overwhelming parts, but mostly it's easier to go with this energy and to interact with it and embody it and enter into it as it is. And we learn it through our circumstances and refine it. Yeah, and right.
You see that one of the texts by Dzogchen the refinement of perception, which was his most famous text, and that basically becoming aware of awareness is ultimately the refinement of our perception. And it's nothing believing in stuff. It's actually refining perception.
Yeah.
It's very. It's called. Sometimes it's probably called Buddhahood without meditation, but it's actually the true name of it is refinement of perception.
Yeah.
So the archetype covers a lot of territory. That's what it feels like. That word, that metaphor.
So, I mean, yeah, because the archetype as an idea can mean so many different things, and we kind of, what does our language of that mean?
So
Something
just
like that.
believing in an archetype, believing in a deity, can probably invoke the deity actually,
Right.
or it just become a mentalistic security action. That's why I want to ask you too. In terms of, you look at archetypes, there's images of archetypes. You mentioned in the paper, you went through something. There's images, and and what's the difference between a mental image and the image that Henry Corbin talks about?
Right. Well, to me, like, it's like the language of archetype, whether it's like Jung or Plato or whoever. There's always, or Corbin. It's like an entrance into text. In Buddhism often, in Dzogchen, when you talk, there's often entrance into text, or like or deity. But all those have a sense connection that I think it limits language-wise what we're talking about. So symbol, to me, has a visual connotation.
Okay.
Or image is purely a visual connotation.
Like a picture almost. Huh?
Well, yeah. I mean, an image is like a mental picture. Like you close your eyes and I'm picturing Jesus, and this is the Jesus that I know, or something like that. Not because those are devoid of a relationship to what we're talking about. In fact, they're incredibly palpable ways of entering into it. Or text, like the word, like the book, like or the names of God. For Corbin, like, it's so important that there's the many, the pluralism of the names of God. Is like, this is how one interacts with it in an individual way.
And free of a concrete.
And free of, right, yes. But all those things, they have a specific sensory application. Like, we're visualizing something, and this is all a visualization. And if we kind of enter into it like that, that's what we're trying to do. But as one kind of, even if it's through visualization or whatever, begins to have a knowingness of the archetype as a thing or as a being, really, as and so not because if I think of it as a 21st century person, if we say there's a deity, I'm going to pray to Shiva, but there's a disconnect on some level if we say this is Shiva. There's a cultural disconnect even. This is a fun thing I'm doing right now, and I really like it. It's hard to enter into the space of the knowing the beingness of it. Or
It's
something
a
like
thought.
it's a thought. There's a thought. Whereas
You
if
don't
we
experience the beingness of the being.
being so and for whatever reason, there's a million different reasons that can be difficult or not, but we want to get into the beingness of the being of the archetype, which is energetic, which is just as we're energetic, just as and removing somehow like one activity to be done practice is almost removing that myth, removing the
taking the scales away.
yeah.
But so there is an ontological dimension to the archetypical.
There is entirely, yeah,
Entirely.
and like an ontological, not only an ontological dimension, but if you treat it ontologically throughout, then intellectually, experientially, anything, it opens up. Is my opinion.
Okay.
Like if you treat them as,
Sometimes in some of these things in phenomenology they use the word sphere, a word I can never pronounce. S-P-H-E-R-E.
Okay.
But it's that seems to emerge at times through the experience of the archetypical dimension is a sphere.
A sphere. Okay.
And I even felt that with Anna a little bit as we started talking, as we were going deeper into that. There was like a container, or we were in I won't say a boat, but there was like a sphere that we were in. You were also in it up to a degree, but I felt this manifestation of an S-P-H-E-R-E. And I'm thinking that's when the archetypical manifestation became much more explicit at that point.
Yeah.
And also gave a feeling of completeness. We could have gone further, but the archetype that was arising there had a complete felt sense of it.
Yeah.
And so even though, one of the thoughts is that there's something about the archetype of who-ness or personhood, and which is also evolves through the centuries and sometimes is lost, which is greatly terrifying. Or even if you look at, there's something about terrorists today, and a lot of the terrorists aren't really necessarily groupies, but just nuts. You with me? But the sense
In
of
what sense were you saying that? Yeah.
well, that certain terrorists, there's no more personhood for them.
Yeah.
There's no persons. And that archetypical dimension in the demise of personhood
Yeah.
is really terrifying.
Yeah.
I'm wandering around with this, but I'm feeling that this is not just a mental game.
No. Yeah. And in that the relationship of your work this morning with Anna, for instance, that moment to me, like, you can give that a name, an archetypal name. I can say that's a very Sun experience.
Yes.
It's very centered on this dialogue of self in a very almost heavy way at points. And she said something, it's no longer the moon, it's no longer
The moon energy.
the mind kind of subconscious into perception into even it becomes just the awareness of self, or like the so if the moon is water and the sun is fire in this one sense, in terms of luminary, it's like fire in that direct sense of self.
Yes.
Not it's active, but it's not just action or something. It's
Yes.
just
It's more like that elementalness
the elemental
of the
yeah.
fire. That's why going into the Dzogchen again, the dakinis are the elements. And the dakinis are considered the elementalness, and it doesn't mean they're just a thing at all, but it's this live.
Yeah.
So this whole world is anima mystic. The whole world
Right.
is
Yeah.
alive.
And that's and as you work in this frame, that's an important, in terms of this being the psychotherapy ceremony. That's a huge step to take. Is this whole world is all this, and what is that connection it's the whole world is part of it. It becomes part of the consciousness, part of the psychology. Yeah.
I'm just watching our time here.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
about 10 after. I think we've got a feel of the multidimensionality of the archetype.
Sure.
I really, the issue of this being ontological,
Mhm.
actually, there's an existence to
Yeah.
it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's not simply imagination, even though the imagination in
Well-
what you call sense is is the object of how we see.
That the imagination.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
I mean, do you have time? Or
Yeah, we got time. We got
stop?
time.
Okay.
No, I'm just keeping this
Okay.
moving because I
Well,
like you to talk more
just
about
the-
him a
so
lot.
that's a big phrase, is to say, oh well, it's the imagination. Oh, it's is this just imaginary? Are we just going into a mental image or visualization
Because
type
some
thing?
Buddhists think that if you some of the Galupas, different traditions
Mm-hmm.
embrace this different ways. The Nyingma tradition embraces it more ontologically, so it's more shamanistic. The more
Mhm.
shamanistic you get into, when you go to an more intellectual thing, it's actually, and I've practiced with people like this. It's more like you're identifying with it intellectually, but it's not
Mhm.
have the same ontological status.
Or you're identifying it as in a mental, like, oh, this is the hidden part of my mind.
Yes.
Something like that, right?
Yes.
Whereas,
So imagination.
yes, so
And we
So-
call it the creative imagination.
so the Surawardhi, who he's writing about, and kind of giving his own meaning to this, is Henry Corbin.
And who is
He was a Sufi master who's very much like the intersection of Islam and Zoroastrianism and kind of Neoplatonism. They really he comes up, his philosophy is like the angelology of light, and it's like so many different angels, and there's the hierarchies, but it's all this kind of expressions, like poetic expressions of these archetypes. So whereas I'm using this language of planets, or we can speak from a Buddhist language of dakinis and this sort of thing. This is all just different angels, and the angels of imagination, or the realm of imagination. The imagination, the artistic impulse, which is entirely different than the visualization, or artistry as a cutting through into symbolic understanding, or
But Agunta
Yeah.
would say that spiritual, the main shape is that basically all this is artistry.
and
It's basically art.
and Corbin would say in the 20th century, this is only left to the poets. That's what he would, like all of Sufism is only left to the poets, or
Who?
but it is the same, because artistry is not, it's not, it's an attempt at a knowingness of an image or a text, or whatever, however language, or a symbol, of a sound, but there's a entrance into what's hidden, which is in the Corbin sense, when he's speaking of Islam, it's like cutting through the Sharia,
Does he use that word cutting through like this?
Oh yeah, constantly.
That's the word.
Yeah, because it's the
Sharp.
the Sharia is the law, and then what's hidden, cutting through that, is he'll use certain surahs in the Quran to argue logically, and using the law to say, even if you're arguing from this perspective, there's points where there's one where Elijah comes and taps Moses on the back, and for some reason this is like a figurative of saying, the hidden meaning is greater than the law, because Moses is the law, and Elijah
That's
has
cool. That is really cool.
Because
a lot of Islam is locked into the law, and
but
masculine
really,
as law.
yeah, definitely, but in the same way that any of these other things are locked into the law, and we see it just in a scarier way right now, but compared to history, this is very little difference. There's the law, and there's the hidden. Yeah.
Really struck me when you started talking about artistry.
Mm-hmm.
The energy changed completely. It's like, to me, it was you're adding experience to the idea.
Definitely. Yeah.
So it's broadening out. It's like adding the transmission to the words.
Yeah.
And you can say blah 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 blah. It
Right, yeah.
And then at the experiential, direct knowing level.
Sure, yeah.
Does that fit?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, to me, that it obviously resonates most from that perspective versus saying, "Oh, I'm a, this or that." I can enter this through art most directly, and also have to attempt hardest through that direction or something like that.
Gets into what Marilyn said in our meditation yesterday. She called it wordless, wordless experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
What did you say? Wordless idea.
Yeah, wordless idea.
Wordless idea.
Exactly.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
Where we experience the light and we can't get a word to capture it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I think that's sort of that's the idea there too. Yeah. Yeah.
Don't speak,
Yeah.
it'll be wrong.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's so delicious when you're not speaking.
Yeah. But so much of that, like with music, for instance, so much of that is an attempt, and I'm saying this, where you'll sing, and without word, right, and you try to bring forth language, right, and you'll go back not in an intellectual sense either, and even in the going back, it's more intellectualized, and then you start to put your own stresses and psychology onto it, and try to translate what you sang into language that would make sense to other people. But nonetheless, there's a process with music, with the composition of all music, which is like a reach into into this intermediate space, and then what I think also makes people good artists or great artists is this capacity then to kind of hold that space as they're going back and forth. So we can all have these, like, or as an astrologer I say, you can have this entrance into the space, but the refining of it is making it transdimensional, and also or trans historic in terms of time. Even that's another very Sufi idea, and also I think a very musical idea or artistic idea in terms of influence. When someone says influence, what has influenced you as a writer or as a musician? In Sufism, this naming of influence, like naming, these are my masters. This is my master from the 15th century, or the pictures here, the naming of all that, or the naming of music that's really important to a musician. That is considered like a cutting through of linear time. That's an interesting entrance into.
Does that pull you into timeless awareness when you do the trans-historical?
I think it's entirely. I think it pulls you immediately into an archetypal experience, because you're interacting with the masters of either of a different time, in a way that you're immediately in a different type of time.
A different type of time.
Then
Bringing them forward.
well, you're bringing them forward. You bring yourself past. You're bringing, but that's the same thing as we were talking about at the beginning. This arises in dialogue, or arises in conversation. Whether that conversation is a group or two people, or a inner dialogue with the hidden guide, and that's why the hidden guide is not a visualization or an image, but it's a hidden guide, And until it's the real thing.
It's also an embodiment of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love that notion of talking to that inner God.
Yeah.
That's really real. When I held Baba's shirt, I got this strong sense of devotion. And cutting through all bullshit stuff.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the inner guide I wanted. It's coming out.
Yeah.
I'd love to have dialogue.
Right. Yeah.
Let's see, time-wise, does anybody want to say anything, and then maybe we'll do a group thing today. Anybody have any questions or statements you want to talk to people about? Yes.
So I love the last post. I mean, I love all the posts, but the very last one seemed so clear, where thoughts, whatever.
Sure, yeah.
Isn't that funny?
In terms of the election stuff, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think so. Was that
Uh-huh.
the last one?
I think so. Yeah. I wrote one
Oh,
about.
yeah.
Yeah.
Where you said it's going to go till about September, till right before the election.
Yeah.
So I wanted
Yeah.
to speak a little bit about that. So we're in this energy till right before the election.
Right.
Then it's all going to change.
Well, okay. So let's take a look at that, because I think the fun part about looking at global astrology, and also the very fraught part where people constantly get these things wrong, is that you go into this language of meaning. You go into this language. Well, Mars, Saturn. Oh God, this is awful. And it's not. And it's. I mean, it is, and it's not. But its nature. Its nature is not. But its manifestations, and practically speaking, yeah, it's not great. But taking it out of the practical into the theoretical, there's something we can hold in this chaos. So what is it? And probably many don't know what we're talking about here. But the Mars is the life force and the fire element, and Saturn is like limitation or contraction. And they're together, and they have been since February. They will be to September, in this Scorpio, which again is like it's the container these beings are in, and so this is like this conjunction that's had a lot of power to it, because when the life force of Mars, the fire, is held by Saturn, it's like almost like being held in a hand. Like it's this agitated fire. It wants to act. It likes to act towards progress. It makes us, want to take action and will. And so it's moving, but it's held in the hand the whole time. So the only way to do anything is to then take the hand and move, which is a very hard thing to see. And so instead, what we do is all the action is wasted, because unless we recognize that there is this complete lack of certainty, or this just moment of confusion and chaos, we can sit in that, and we can hold that, and hold that kind of opposition of that moment, then it's actually a powerful point where I want to change all these things. If we know that, okay, there can be no certainty in what I'm changing. I don't know what's going to happen, but I can keep moving forward in a somewhat linear way, because Saturn likes linearity. Then it's okay. And then maybe even it's powerful. Maybe like these little things that have very little certainty to them suddenly blossom later on. Does that resonate with everyone? So globally, one thing you can do globally is you can say, well, for the vast majority of people are probably not going to be so aware. And so this could be kind of a chaotic, crazy time. But you don't want to put your own fear into this, okay? Because it's really like, all this is also in Scorpio. This sign, it's like, where's this sitting? How is this being experienced? It's being experienced in the depths of Scorpio. The water of Scorpio is like a fixed, pulling you into depth, dark water, which is powerful. So if there's all this chaos in the depth of Scorpio, this is an incredibly mystical, powerful moment in terms of like the fear rising. There's so much to it. There's some strangeness to it. There's so much of that. But if that's not how we experience, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of terror, and the manifestations that are real are terror. Like as well. Like there's these scary things.
And that's the position.
That's the position of the moment,
The
February to
position
September.
in space.
Like in the sky, Mars and Saturn and Scorpio. Right? Okay. And then how that interacts with us as individuals will make a big difference. But as a world, that we feel this. Now, we looked in that article you're talking about. Donald Trump is born on this axis, where he was born on a lunar eclipse. Okay, night of a lunar eclipse, where the moon is in Scorpio, and the sun is going to be opposite in Taurus. Okay, so he's born where like his whole perception, the moon, his whole mind, how he experiences things, is all of Scorpio, of this very depth and fear and understanding of energy. Really, Scorpio's movement of energy. So how do you move energy? When he's on stage and he's like, it doesn't really matter what we're saying. We're just trying to just raise it up. Just raise it up. But that's what's amazing. But that's what this moment is.
Yeah.
And so if he's like, let's just raise it up. Let's just see what happens. Like you in the back, like just start firing it off. But that's what and what is this? This is no different this is like a Shakti. This is a power. It's value neutral. He could do this and then say like, you know, he could with more refinement, with more holding and control of this. He has no control because it's all coming from the ego side or from like, and it's all kind of subsumed by it. That's what I would say is the key point, is that he's the man of the moment for it. In this, because the moment is this kind of in mass mind, the mob, the crowd, you know.
He's expressing it and meeting it, huh?
Right, and well, he's recognized it. He's enough to say, "Oh, I've got this stuff. I can do this." But then he tries to embody it through saying, "This is about me." At those points, when it becomes petty or when it becomes about revenge, those are the points that always do people. And like, you know, you'll see it a lot. Like you'll see this energy a lot when people go through like a bad divorce or something, and you know. I'm always saying, and this is taking it back into very circumstances, but maybe it illuminates the energy a little bit. This is why I'm saying this. And he said, just don't say anything bad. Just don't do anything vengeful, you know, because if you do, it's going to come back. And it always is like, oh wow, it really came back. I don't know, you know. But the reason for that is because it's holding this field differently than it. You know, it's not trying to refine it. It's not trying to hold it and metabolize it. Yeah.
When they come, Somutananda was moon in Scorpio. Same exact thing.
That's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Somutananda had this perception that was very, at times, there was not much frontal cortex. He would just say what he saw. You with
Yeah.
me?
Mm-hmm.
And just like you felt that, so being with him at times, what he was experiencing came right directly without much mediation. And yet at the same time, he worked to refine it. I'm talking to Chakapani one time.
Yeah.
Chakapani says he could have been a totally worldly person. He didn't have a particularly spiritual chart. He had a most powerful chart.
You know, he could have been like a killer businessman, like just like owning and you know, like in a really sort of.
He could have been pretty much anything.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
he really chose spirituality from a point of compassion. And so he worked all these energies, you with me? And especially that sounds like the king.
The Rahu and
the Ketu and Rahu.
His side is, which one you get into a refined, rarefied, spiritual side of this.
Mhm.
It's not either active or passive as
Uh-huh.
much as it's just the palpable energy of it, the Rahu can do. But his Rahu was incredibly powerful, like, you know, and in a way that allowed him to express it as well. I can't remember the conjunction now, but like it was in a kind of very original way. The expression of Rahu, the expression of this energy, like, which is why like the Shaktipat, you know, other people would do that, but no one would do it. It was not in the same level of sort of shock and awe as his version was.
Shock
You know,
and
you
awe,
know, like
shock
the do you know what I mean? Like other people say they're doing that, but
Yeah.
you see you know, like I was a little kid, I remember the big differences in the people,
Yeah.
you know, like just the visual of it. You're like, this is different than what I've seen since, you know, like, you know, like, so it may be because it's also there's more energy to it, but also because the nature of it was to be sort of this chaos and
chaos.
surprise and just this pure wildness, you know, that was part of it.
The
Yeah.
wild gods.
September.
Kanu?
Well, now,
Coming in September.
so it's not.
Okay.
So saying he embodies all this, okay, but he's being subsumed, like he's part of it, but he's not owning it. He's not controlling it, okay? He's not aware of it by any means. Like what I would say, people, when he gets off stage, I think he's just as bad. Like, you know, I don't think I picture him like running around naked off stage, you know, with like a giant turkey leg or something, you know, like it's like a you know, kind of because he's like always on fire right now, you know, and he is this eclipse. This is his birth chart, his moon, which is his perception, and then his sun, which is very, again, that archetype of self, is on this axis of this moment. That's all this chaotic, crazy energy, and there's such a good chance that he could be consumed by it. before September, right?
The difference between him and Baba was that Baba could turn around on a dime
Yeah,
and like take all that fire and be the most tender, loving,
yeah, yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
I don't see that with Baba.
No, these are not related at all. I mean, it's not. We're talking about. We're talking about, and maybe but we're just talking about the ability to tap into an energy that we're not talking about anything moral. We're not talking about anything personality here. Even there is actually a couple funny little personality traits we could talk about, but it's like that's not what we're talking about. Is the ability to tap into the cultural mind, or like the psyche, not the mind, but the psyche,
The psyche.
and like on the wild uncanny level. And so one manipulation of that is just big crowds, craziness. Another is taking all that like heaviness and it's also, and turning into real spiritual energy, like, a Shakti pot. This is, but it's not. The content isn't even the same really, but except on an archetypal level. This is just this is the energy of the moment. So what happens? He could be consumed by it at any point between now and September, and it's amazing that he hasn't. It's really what it, and that's what you can't wait. You can just kind of be like, I really hope this works out by then. That he, it really could like spontaneously catch on fire, and that we'll just call it a day. Like, okay, didn't see that one coming. But if he makes it, if he makes it into like say October, all right, without where we're talking, it's 50-50,
What are the
then
forces?
I don't like it.
What are the forces at work?
Well, the thing that I don't like most, the force is that, okay, Mars separates from Saturn at that point. Okay, when Mars briefly went retrograde and separated from Saturn about June 21st was when it finally went into Libra. But it was about, say, like June 17th till July. I think, right, what are we at now? We're like the 20th. So it's back, they're coming back together now. But till about the 10th or 15th, I think, like they were separate. At that point, and I was telling people, I was like, I think we'll have more clarity. Okay, we'll have a little bit of sense of, this or that. Right when it started, they went retrograde. Bernie sort of fell out, lost, and I think there was a moment of clarity. Like, okay, we can see Hillary again. Like people starting to like her a little bit more, and everything's okay. But the clarity that really came was the Brexit thing, which was like, I would have, and if you'd asked me predictively, I would have said, no, there's no way, because right as Mars goes retrograde, it goes into Libra, the results are in, so they're going to remain, because they're going to have a clarity of, and this is, again, putting my politics into it, so it's probably, this is bad astrology, this is like one thing I say never do. But having said that, the clarity will come there, but one reading of that is to say, well, no, actually the clarity came, but it came because it went into Libra like literally an hour before the results came in. So I don't really know if it was exactly that, but it was much more like a curtain coming up than astrology usually is, I think. But you see it in that moment. There's a lot of clarity. Oh God, what have we done?
Yes.
What have these rubes done? Like this is, and it was clarity, but it was a clarity of that the last few months, what it had been about wasting energy, which is the very nature of this stuff. In February, right when they came together, was when David Cameron said, I'd like to have a referendum. And all this kind of crazy chaotic energy is just wasted potential. Because no one was able to hold opposition, which is the other side of what Mars Saturn really can be, and which what you see in Clinton's chart, which is great. Okay, so we have all this esoteric kind of scary astrology. We look at Trump. What does she can do? And what we see her doing practically is the capacity to hold paradox, to build coalition of people who do not get along, okay, in boring, Saturnian, frustrating way. It's painful to her, like just taking it on the chin over and over again. But she does it, and that is ultimately a more adept position, and a position towards more progress. And if she can hold that, if she can, if Bill can do it, and if Bill doesn't say something, because that's a real part of her chart is Bill's,
Billy
but if they can be, if she can be, just hold what she's doing, just like a rock, then she should win.
Wow.
Yeah.
But God, but
Yeah. Yeah. But it's like, it will be a trial like no one's gone through a trial before, for politically. But she's the person to do it, but she's gonna have to, like,
She really is a cultural character.
she has to,
isn't she?
but she just has to hold all this energy,
So we should send her lots of love and support.
Yeah.
that's exactly, we have to be out there.
That's also our task in the moment.
Our task is holding, like, so all those terrible things that happened at this convention the first day, the people saying this and that, all these horrible things, and then everybody went with this crazy, including myself. I was like, oh, this is great, when she did the plagiarized speech or whatever. But all that, instead of speaking or just saying, anything with any truth, we made fun of this lady for plagiarizing a speech. She probably didn't know she was probably reading off a thing, but it was funny, right? But it's also like this. It's a wasted potential to say, but we're not hate, or we're not, and really not even to jump into the polemical, because it's not a rational objective moment. There's no, so all these people who say, well, let me argue this. Let me tell you, your opinion is wrong because I can argue this rationally. It just creates more wasted. It doesn't matter anymore. But what does is the ability to hold opposition. So not just paradox, not just pairs of opposites, but even opposition in the sense of this is conflict, and I'm trying to hold conflict in a non-conflictual way. That has like a power to not, because when we get into the conflict, we actually, so the fire is either self-sustaining or self-immolating. And as soon as you enter the conflict in this moment, it's self-immolating, Yeah.
Seems to me there's also this piece of not entering the terror of what it might be if Trump got it. So we have
That's
to-
also
we don't
true.
wanna
Yeah,
manifest
yeah.
that.
Like getting stuck on this certainty. That's a brilliant way of reading that on an archetypal level. Is that, and what I really haven't thought of, it's like, so on a personal level, this certainty really is messing with people. I don't know what's going to happen in my future, right? But if we enter it on a global level like that, like, I can't imagine what's going to happen for my kids, and it really, one thing it does too is it pushes into a more conservative position, because that sort of fear is a Saturnian fear, and it pushes it into a conservative kind of position. But also, yeah, it's waste. It really ends up being waste. I'm so scared. What's going to happen if he's, like, I'm sitting here and I'm not doing anything because I'm so scared. I'm paralyzed. That's the Saturnian fear's paralysis. Whereas if I could have just gone out and handed out flyers to 30 people, one of them would have voted, and that's because we're talking about mass stuff here. Like, talking Saturn is the masses in democracy, and for it to work, you have to let go of the fear. Right? Yeah.
Not have so many expectations.
So we're gonna hold our group right now. Thank you.
Thanks.
So let's just do this. We'll put the, Yes. There you go, Pete. You want to hold that? So you want to sit there, you want to sit there, and we'll fill in around our triangles, and we can bring the computer someplace, and we'll hold the awareness field together, and we'll focus on everything. And I'll press that song from Guru Purnima that's playing there. Might put something else on too. So we'll extend awareness to each other. Extend awareness to those we know and love. And we'll extend it to those two people are archetypically, who carry those archetypes, so those cultural archetypes, huh? And running for president right now. And as we extend, we feel that energy, huh? Today's Guru Purnima, so we extend to the Guru. Within us and around us, through us. Extend to all those people who have helped carry that function for us and with us, including our mothers, the first Guru. We just focus on the Guru now and all the different forms of that archetype. Different dimensions. We really appreciate Pete's talk today. It was so infusing. Extend to our friends on the internet. I'm glad Mary Ann's leaving the hospital today. And Laura, could you just press that little button that turns it back on? And it's the one that says, it's like a little, yeah, just there's one little button there. And if you can't find it, the music should come back on. We'll put CD back up. Want me to come do it? That's great. Here we go. Great. Is Karen here? That's okay. Hi, Karen. we have a job for you. We did this one time before, and it's such a good time. Would you mind taking the feathers and just place it in people's heads with a little whack, but not too much? It'll be a symbolic function, right? We'll focus on our families. Focus on the generational field. And focus on and we invoke the protection of the Guru for all of us and for those we know and love and for everyone. Extend to the great teachers we have known throughout our lives. We'll extend to all the different traditions we participate in, themselves fields of knowledge, information, and light. Huh? And often they have an archetypical quality, huh? Cultural archetypes. Then we extend to that dimension of being, which is archetypal. And extend to the guru, the archetype of the guru this morning. So it must be a full moon too, right? Focus on the Swami Muktananda, who's our root teacher here. And his great generosity. So extend to those who have died the past year. The light. Extend into the light. Extend the light at the archetypical realm. Once you can think of Swantananda's words. Guru is your own self. I don't care if you love me. The Guru is your own self. You know, you should get beyond right and wrong. You should get beyond good and evil. You should get beyond better and best. You should get beyond truth and falsity. And then you will live life after life and death after death in the divine self. With the Guru, with beings that truly embody that power so completely, there's something called sankalpa. Amma has sankalpa, and Baba has sankalpa. So what they say is actually not a wish. What they say has fruition. Sankalpa, what is said, has fruition. With that, we'll rub our hands together, place it on our hearts. Thank everybody for coming today. Thank Pete so much for and such a great time. And also, I've heard that on August 20th, Krishna Das is going to be at Lama Norla's monastery, and that should be lots of fun. When Lama Norla escaped from Tibet, and he went to, I forget the yogi, he's not Harigiri Baba, Reincarnated Baba, and he lived there, and Krishna Das was there. He's really great, wonderful master, huh? And so Lama Norla lived there for a year, huh? And so Krishna Das, this really will be a fantastic, totally cool. So some of us, a lot of us think about going, and so you might want to think about that. I think you might have to make reservations and get a hotel, things like that. Thank you, guys. Yes. Huh? We're not doing Saturday, no, I think.
One quick thing, Jeff is doing another
Okay,
talk.
cool.
And meditation at our place in Chevy Chase Saturday from 12:30 to 3:34.
Great. Cool. Thank you, guys. No, we're not having Friday morning. Not being here Friday morning. No Friday morning. No meditation Friday morning. Huh? I'm doing, yes, I'll have CEUs by next week. By next week, CEUs, yes. I'll get those numbers. They'll be there. They were there. Bye. Bye, everybody.